She said, I know you feel like crap now, but hear me when I say I am so happy to see you here alive, because I was on the razor's edge the night my leg was removed. She was preparing my wife that I would not make it through the first 2 surgeries.
Wilfred Lun boarded the flight to Vancouver for work like it was any other day. He never imagined he wouldn't come home the same person. Within days, his life split between the before and after. This isn't a story about what happened to him. It's a conversation about what happens after. When the life that you expect completely disappears, and you have to decide how you want to move forward. If you've ever faced a moment that you didn't choose but was chosen for you, well, this episode is for you. Well, just before, I feel like you and I have known each other since we were in diapers in many ways. We go a long way back. And so I know you very well from our days from elementary school. But maybe before we talk about everything that happened in your story, can you give listeners a bit of a snapshot of who you are, the version, maybe talk a little bit more about who you are beyond what people may see online or on LinkedIn. Give us a bit of a background on you before kind of life through that unimaginable sort of situation in your way.
Thank you, Charles. It's an honor to be here with you. And as you said, we go back to our elementary school days, and I think that's really unique and special. So I'm glad we're connecting here on this platform, Charles, with you, and I look forward to connecting with you and your listeners. I grew up in Ottawa and was raised by hardworking immigrant parents. They sort of preached the very typical Asian thing, right? Which is dedication to study. But they also made some time for fun. We traveled the world, as you know, when I was a kid. And some of my fondest memories were from our travels, right? Where I learned the value of respect for others. I remember coming home to school, right? For the first day of school after summer vacation. And we'd share stories about where I went for travel and where you wanted to go, which you ended up doing.
Yes.
So I ended up transferring, though, to Toronto after university for work. And I started a family, have a lovely 11-year-old daughter. And I would say those are the things that I value the most in life. It's family, it's community, and it's respect for others long before I faced personal adversity. I brought that hardworking mindset, though, at work to everything I did. And I guess my personal mindset is I always tried to turn every job into a career. And ultimately, hopefully, every career into a calling. That was always my thinking. And fast forward to 2023, and I'm working for TD Bank. I was promoted that year, and I was the recipient of my second award, right, where they send recipients away to travel and celebrate with fellow colleagues and network with executives. And I took a flight to Vancouver in July to do that. So you could say, Charles, that I was flying high in the air, but also flying high in my career as
right.
well.
Okay. You've been a family man, for many, many years with, I've enjoyed spending time with your family, with Yana, your daughter. I mean, it's been so good. And, it's been, and Jenny, your wife, you are definitely a family, a consummate family man, and you really have a lot of time and love for your family. And I appreciate that. It shows in the way that you interact and engage with them. And I love that. And so, you went from, in many ways, kind of life as normal to this kind of life-threatening medical crisis, essentially like almost overnight, right? Can you take us to the moment where you realized that something was seriously wrong? So you could tell. Maybe you can walk us through how that all transpired and how that all sort of unraveled.
You know that moment when the plane lands and everybody is super excited to get off and start their trip and stand up? Yeah, that was my moment for me when I first stood up from my window seat to disembark in Vancouver following a long flight from Toronto. My left calf was in so much pain. It was as if I pulled a calf that wouldn't go away. And the pain was so severe that I was limping, right, as I got off, and I'm normally a fast walker, but I remember these elderly folks were passing me on the way to baggage claim, and
Okay.
one look from a fellow award winner, and he knew something was terribly wrong. I spiked a fever, I looked pale, and I was limping. I ended up boarding the early bus to the hotel. I did some networking, and as I checked in, and I collapsed on my bed. The next night, 911 was called, and I was on the floor of the lobby of a five-star hotel in Vancouver being attended by the fire department and paramedics. I went to the emergency room, and the attending surgeon looked at me, and he gave me a look, Charles, that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. It's a look you never want to see from your physician. It's kind of like, this. And I knew something was wrong. I signed a few forms and went in for debridement surgery, right? Which is where they attempt to cleanse your leg of infection by removing skin and tissue. And I ended up being diagnosed with necrotizing fasciitis. It's a type of flesh eating disease. And basically, what this does is it takes an inch of your body an hour. I ended up having multiple organ failure. My kidneys failed, and I went on dialysis, and I nearly died that night. I'm still having heart problems to this day from the stress that it was under. I was intubated, so there were machines that were basically breathing for me, and I spent the next 6 days sedated. And when I woke up, my left leg was missing above the knee, and there was blood everywhere, and that was literally day one of the rest of my life.
Wow. What made you realize, I guess, that this wasn't just another bad day? Like, most people would have kind of just brushed off the pain in their calf or thinking it might be a cold or a flu or some other sort of symptoms, right? As a result of something else, a cold flu. But so how did you know? What made you realize that, this is just not another bad day? Like, this is something that's far more acute than what I think it actually is.
Exactly. Like sometimes a lot of times we want to sleep it off, and
Mm-hmm.
we want to pretend like it's a bad dream, right? And
Mm.
that's exactly what happened to me is as I was in this hotel, I decided to kind of take a nap and I was thinking, this must be a bad nightmare. This must be
Mm.
a bad dream. No worries, right? I was always kind of tough in that way physically, and I just sort of it's like the Canadian sort of thing, right? Like you get hit by a puck, you take a shift off, and you get
Yes.
back. So I
Yes.
decided to
Yeah.
take a nap, and when I woke up from the nap, Charles, I thought must be a bad dream, and I proceeded to stand up from my bed, and I almost fell. I couldn't put
Wow.
any leg on it, and at that point, it confirmed to me that I couldn't walk before, I can't walk now. I definitely need to seek help. So that was the moment.
Wow. And so your spouse, how does she find out? Your daughter, you're across the country, obviously being here based in the GTA, the Greater Toronto area, and then you're on your way to Vancouver for a work event to honor and highlight all the great work you've done. And how does your family, your immediate family, your extended family, how do people start to find out? And do you tell them, like, are you even conscious? Are you out of it for several days? How can you give us a bit of a understanding in terms of how that all transpired and what that looked like shortly thereafter?
I was in communication with my spouse, my wife here in Toronto, and letting her know that I was sick, and she was worried, right? Like I previously said, I tend to be pretty strong, right? And if I'm complaining about something, it's usually troublesome. But I'm like, no worries, I'll just sleep it off. It's a little bit of pain, no worries. I was also supported by the HR department of our company at this work event, and they provided so much support for me. They were literally on the same floor as me, in fact. And so they were with me every step of the way as things escalated, right? And as I went into the hospital and the emergency room, our HR department was in contact with my wife. And as I went into surgery, I wasn't able to say anything or talk to my wife. I was sedated for 6 days. But the HR executives were in contact with my wife, and they brought her to Vancouver along with her best friend overnight, because they were, acting as an in-between between the hospital and herself. So it was a crazy tough time for my wife. We didn't have family here, so she needed to call her parents in from Korea to look after our daughter. And then she flew overnight to Vancouver to be by my side. I had a lot of support. And that's what it takes, Charles, to get past these things, right? It's love, support from community, support from colleagues, friends, and family. And I think you're going to see that as a theme throughout.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a village. I think we hear that in so many different cases and so many different examples. When when you're going through the moment itself, then, well, when the diagnosis really kind of hit and the reality of losing your leg became clear, what was happening inside of you? Was it terror? Was it clarity? Was it shock? Was it all at once? Do you feel like you're dreaming? Can you give us a bit of insight in terms of what your thought process were, or maybe or even what was going through your mind?
Yeah, at first it was profound sadness, right? I was really sad, but that only lasted a little bit, Charles, before I was ready to think about what's ahead. Having said that, sometimes I do wonder even now, like, does my leg miss me? So I lost my leg above the knee as a result of this disease. And I wonder, does my leg miss me? Yeah, I think it's healthy to acknowledge our feelings,
Mm,
to acknowledge our loss. Time does heal, and I think this will heal as well with time, right? But I like the word you used in terms of clarity. I think I gained clarity pretty quickly after that initial feeling of sadness and loss. I knew I would walk again. I was determined to walk again, and I put my whole mindset into everything I do. I will endeavor to walk again. I spent 2 months in hospital in Vancouver, and on the final day of the hospital stay, I was being medevaced back home to Toronto to be closer to my family. So I was dangling on this picture that I was dangling on a ceiling crane being transferred
wow.
from my hospital bed to my ambulance bed. And as I'm suspended from the ceiling, my surgeon came in to say goodbye after 2 months. We had developed a close relationship. And he said he was coming in to say goodbye, and I told him that I didn't believe in goodbyes, and I made him a promise that I'll return to Vancouver General Hospital, and when I do, I'm going to walk in. Then the ceiling crane kinda proceeded to lift me and shift me to this
Mm,
hospital bed or ambulance bed, and off I
mm-hmm,
went to Toronto. I started a fitting for my prosthetic limb, in December of 20 this happened in July of 2023. I
mm-hmm.
started a fitting for a prosthetic limb in December 2023. I started to walk with a cane at the end of February 2024, and by May and June, I fulfilled my promise, and I returned to Vancouver, and I walked in, and I was able to thank the surgeons and the staff that saved my life. My point is that those feelings of shock, terror, as you mentioned, right? They turned into clarity of purpose pretty quickly, and there was only determination to overcome.
Wow. Well, I mean, there's so many things to unpack there, right? Because I mean, for me, it's when I first initially heard this story, you sent me this text message, and I think it was summertime, as you said, 2023. I was flying to go see family. I'm like, is this a real text? Like, is this actually happening? And then getting in touch with you and finding out what happened, and even chatting with you when we came back at a certain time when you were ready to be able to see friends and family, one on one, that type of thing. Most of us would easily just kind of the woe is me. You never had that mentality. Like even before this incident, you've always been someone who has been like when you focus on something, you do it 150%, right? If anything, it's something that we all as your friends have admired in you, right? And sometimes I'm like, man, I don't know how this guy does it, but this is something that would have easily been able to, we would all, feeling bad for yourself is a normal reaction, normal feeling. So I'm just more like, how long? I mean, obviously it's a journey. It's not to say that everything's fine, everything's okay. whether it be psychologically or physically. But for most people who are going through challenges and problems in their life, like what is it that has allowed you to kind of see the bright side of this, to kind of move you through that journey, that continuum? And like, what was it? Has it been prayer? Has it been meditation? Has it been family? Like, what have you told yourself, or what's allowed you to kind of see the positivity of, that clarity that you said that, that has been able, this experience has given you?
It's different for everybody, right? But I think that, and I'm still battling, right? I'm
Yeah,
still
yeah.
battling psychological pain as well as physical pain to this day, and it'll probably last for the remainder of my life. But one thing I want to highlight is, for me, my mindset was very, very strong. I think I never gave up on life, right? When I woke up from the 6 day sedation, the first time I woke up, I remember so clearly it was the medical staff removing the intubation tube from my throat. And it actually caused some damage to my vocal cords. So I wasn't able to speak clearly for several months. So
Wow.
that was the first time. And then I was sedated again. The second time, and I didn't know I lost my leg that first time, but the second time, that was a time when all was quiet and I was I was out of the emergency room and into the intensive care unit, or ICU. And I woke up and it was just a surgeon and myself.
Mm,
And I think they were coaxing me to wake up, right?
mm,
And I looked down and I saw blood, and I saw my leg was missing. And I kid you not, for me, I felt sad, as I mentioned earlier, for only about 10 seconds. So after that, my surgeon stood up and she told me, she said, "I'm so sorry." The first thing I want to say is I'm very, very sorry that this happened to you, because we rarely see something like this at someone your age. And she paused and I told her, "There is nothing to be sorry about. I will work to be the best patient and I will do everything you say. I need your help, right? I need your medical help to help me feel better and to ultimately get out of here to be
mm,
with my family,
mhm,
right? But there's nothing to be sorry about. And for me, it was a mindset, Charles. It was
mm,
about how do I change my mindset in that moment to only focus on what's ahead, right? And for me, what was ahead was recovery, was healing, and seeing my family again. And then I asked for my TD Bank laptop, right? And because I wanted, I kid you not, I wanted my work laptop in order to tell my colleagues what happened to me, right? They were always in the
Yes.
back of my mind, and that's that hardworking mindset. That's that sort of that passion for study, at an
Yes.
early age, or that passion for working. I wanted to tell my colleagues, and I think at that point, Charles, the surgeons probably they declined the request, but I think they also told me that I think we need to lighten up on some of the drugs. Now, I was on the hardest drugs you can imagine. I was
Oh,
on
man.
lidocaine, ketamine, morphine, hydromorphone. So it may have been a trigger to help lighten up, but yeah, that it was a mindset shift for me
Okay.
that happened very, very quickly. In my mind, I didn't have a choice. I could feel sorry for myself. What is feeling sorry going to do? It's not going to bring my leg back. So there's only one option, and that is to embrace this recovery and tackle it head on.
You realize all that in the moment? Like, I mean, this is stuff you've been able to reflect on this, of course, over the last 2 years, 2.5 years, right? So is that something that, what I love about you, Ben, is have always been such a focused, dedicated, very disciplined in your approach in everything, schoolwork, anything you apply yourself to, you have that kind of no nonsense work ethic approach to it in many ways. But did you realize all that in the moment, or was it something that evolved over time? Because again, there's that time of kind I'm sure when you're by yourself and those moments, like what is going through your head thinking, like the why me? Like, why is this happening? Like, what do I do? Like, to me, it just sounds so captivating about the fact that you are able to have that clarity of thought in that present moment to say that, okay, I'm not going to feel sorry for myself? Was it as simple as that? Or is it something that's just kind of evolved over time?
It was really quick for me. I didn't
Hmm.
have a choice. I knew right away, my leg wouldn't come back. But I also knew that it would be a lifelong journey, right? I also knew that, wait a second though. Even though this is a lifelong journey, this makes me kind of unique, right? Amputations aren't common, and so it kind of gave me a little bit of a superpower, and I was ready to embrace that very, very quickly. But I will acknowledge, right, that the psychological loss is just as difficult to overcome as a physical loss. The physical loss is quick. That's not going to grow back. But the psychological loss, Charles, remains, right? And in both cases, the physical and the psychological, in this case, it's permanent. I was diagnosed with anxiety and I ended up going on medication for that. Um, PTSD is something that I'm currently struggling with. It's my remaining limb and my body will shiver and convulse as a stimulus to certain actions. And it's scary. My body still remembers the amputation. Even though I was sedated for it, it
Wow.
still remembers the removal of the limb.
Wow.
And so I guess I would say stepping back, psychologically speaking, right? Like every day does start with a dip, right? I wake up and
Hmm.
I instantly realize that I have to take on the day without my leg.
Hmm.
But you know what? Like we all have a choice to make every morning. We can choose to be happy to start the day, right? Or we can choose to let the day dictate how we feel. I think if we choose happiness, if we choose to let the past go, we prevent life from dictating to us how to feel or how we will feel for the day. If we don't take care of our emotions at the beginning of each day, the day will choose how we feel for us. And let's not let that happen. The physical was quick to overcome, but the psychological has been years and years, and I continue to battle that. That's kind of my message so far that I've learned. Choose happiness, make a conscious and intentional choice every morning to dictate how we're going to feel for that day.
I love that. That's something I've as a result of my own experience and my own journey, I've learned that as well. The intention, being intentional about being happy, because if you can start your day with that intentionality of I choose to be happy, I intentionally am going to be happy and grateful for whatever comes my way, the challenges. If you can start that way as opposed to being proactive in terms of setting your intention as opposed to being reactive to whatever the world throws at you and then you react and let the world dictate your mood and how you go about your day. I love that intentionality there. It's interesting, there's a sense that misery loves company. And so I often wonder too if other people, when as you were telling your story, it's almost as if they want you to gravitate and want to hear that. I don't know if it's negativity, but they want to hear the sadness. They want to like. Do other people bring you down in terms of them when they ask you your experience in the story? Is there a sense of that that's there in terms of the fact that other people want to, I don't know, this negativity or the sense of sadness or the sense of them feeling bad for you. How do you handle that?
I would say that there is, right? And that's something I think that I would encourage all of us to guard against, right? Is negativity and try not to let feelings of negativity get to you and to recognize it right away and to stop it. Like the
Mm.
example of my surgeon, the first thing she said to me, and she had great intentions, right? Is I'm so, so sorry for you. And I appreciated it. I appreciated so much. However, I recognized it, right? And I was like, you know what? Okay, I will allow the first comment to be about feeling sorry for me. However, that's the end of it, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
And no offense, but within 10 seconds, it's like, I appreciate it, but now I'm moving forward and I need your help. And that's the mindset. I want you to have that mindset, and I'm going to have that mindset, right? I personally react better to, I think most people do, but I react better to positivity and to people who are positive around me. Charles, I remember another surgeon who came in weeks later, and I was miserable. I was in Vancouver. I was on antibiotics, and I was sick as hell. And it was the morning, and I was just feeling horrible. I was dizzy. I was sick. And she came in and she said, I wanted to talk to you for so long. And she was crying.
The
And she
surgeon
said,
was.
yeah, there was another surgeon. And she said, I was one of the residents on duty the night that we removed your leg. She was a doctor who ended up saving other limbs. So I almost lost fingers and toes as well, Charles, that night. But luckily, they were saved because they took medical action in order to save my other limbs. And I only lost my left leg above the knee. She said, I know you feel like crap now, but hear me when I say I am so happy to see you here alive, because I was on the razor's edge the night my leg was removed. She was preparing my wife that I would not make it through the first two surgeries. I had multiple organ failure. I was struggling to breathe. It wasn't even so much about my leg at that point, Charles. It was my life. And she was just so happy that she could see me, that I was alive, that I only had one leg, but I was alive. And she was crying, and I was emotional. And when she left, I thanked her for that. And I called my wife in Toronto, and I told her, I think I met the surgeon you were talking about, the surgeon who prepared you that I might lose my life. I think I met her this morning. I'll always be grateful for those interactions with medical staff at VGH. But that's an example of where positivity helps drive positivity. And when you hear somebody be negative in your life, try your best to recognize it and to shift the conversation, right? You dictate that conversation. You have the power to. So make that happen.
Do you ever think, Will, about how this whole situation, this whole incident, what you went through has impacted? I mean, there's obviously your immediate family and how it's impacted their lives. And I enjoyed talking to your spouse and just hearing her perspective, what she went through. Because I mean, it's almost as if the story, you are, of course, the main character in the story, but to hear what your spouse went through and her experience, speaking to some of our friends, and as they heard about it and how they reacted and how it affected them. Do you often think about how, and I'm hearing this example of the surgeon too, like your life has created this kind of ripple effect on so many of us. So many of us have kind of taken things for granted on autopilot and just never thought, you realize how microscopic and how minor and inconsequential some of the things that we complain about. Do you understand the impact about what this situation to you has affected the rest of us? Are you surprised by the ripple effect, the vibrations of what your situation, how it's affected the rest of us?
First of all, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be alive without my family and my friends and my colleagues. Every single one of you played a part in saving my life, and it was just as important as the medical staff. And I do realize how impactful this has been, first of all, for my immediate family, right? It was an amputation on myself, but in a way, my family also lost something. While they didn't lose a limb, they lost a close one who lost a limb, and that impacted my wife and my daughter greatly. Now, having said that, they're very, very resilient and they're very, very strong. That core strength, kept us through these dark, dark times, right? And emerged even stronger as a family. So it has been terribly impactful, and I feel horrible that this happened not just to me, but to my friends and family as well. I realize how much I've taken for granted. I think, you mentioned that in your remarks. And some of the things that I think I've taken for granted are things like their basic rights, right? Things like accessibility, inclusion, but also everyday ease of life. I'd call it a blind spot, right? Like, I think This has been a blind spot in my life, and I think as someone who has developed this lived experience, who acquired a disability in the middle of my life,
Mhm.
that's allowed me to realize all the work we still have to do as a community, right? To make our spaces more accessible, to have a mindset to be more inclusive, and to try our best to increase the quality of life for everyone.
Hmm. Was the issue of accessibility ever in your mind? I mean, one of the things that you and I have talked about is the fact that I can't remember, you mentioned a quote or a stat. I don't know if it was from the UN. You shared something just in terms of the fact that all of us will go through some form of disability in our lifetime. And so no one, of course, most of us don't go through as drastic a change as you've gone through over the last couple of years. And it's not front of mind for us because we all tend to think that we'll continue to be the same, in many ways, able-bodied for those of us who are individual, and that things will change over time. So were you even aware around issues around accessibility? I think the story that I really enjoyed that you told me was the conversation that you had had with your CFO, your senior executive on your team, and just and this was a previous conversation that you had with them around accessibility. Maybe you can share some insights around that, because remind me, like, was it front of mind for you? Does these issues front and center for you? Because you don't have the lived experience. You only hear about it from others who've gone through the same sort of situation. So maybe you can give us a bit of insight around that.
Yeah, and it's crazy how sometimes the stars align in ways that we don't even understand how or why, right? So, yeah, I was golfing with, a senior executive at TD and in Punta Cana. This is going back to 2019, I'm going to say, early 2019. And I asked him for some career advice during the round of golf. And he said, one thing that you could think about is, um, volunteering your time and to, with our diversity and inclusion pillars, right? And you could choose one, right? Whether that's Black experience or LGBTQ, Indigenous peoples, as well as people with disabilities. But he said all of those, he felt like one area that maybe needs more understanding, one space, right, was people with disabilities.
Hmm.
And I never forgot that conversation. That night in Punta Cana, ended up being seated next to one of the leaders of the TD Bank's people with disabilities employee resource groups. And, we talked, and I ended up coming back to Toronto, back to work, and volunteering my time in the PWD space.
This was 4 years before the incident.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
that's right, and I did not really have a personal connection, Charles, right? I was not a person with a
Yes.
disability, I didn't identify as that, and life has a way of aligning, right? And I ended up, years later, acquiring a disability in my life. And now I'm back in this space, having had this lived experience and sharing at a much more deeper level. Now I'm involved with the same employee resource group, and I'm doing
Wow.
reverse mentoring
Wow.
for our executives. Yeah, it's resonating with our
Wow.
colleagues, and life has a way of just coming back, right? I think that's really amazing. And I'm so happy to kind of share what I've been going through and helping others to overcome.
When he mentions and talked about your CFO, your senior chief executive, or your chief financial officer, when he had talked about, kind of figuring out a way of getting involved in supporting, your organization's diversity and inclusion strategy and goals, and he focused on the people with disabilities area, like pillar, what's going to be going through your mind? Like, first of all, you don't have a lived experience, you don't have a connection to that group. Most people, I'm sure some people listening, he would be like, okay, that's great, but I aligned or identify with this particular group, or this is not something of interest to me. Like, what made you decide to kind of scratch that itch and learn a little bit more about that before you even had to go through what you went through? Like, that to me is the fact that even this story you shared with me, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what are the chances of that actually happening? The stars aligning, as you said, and the universe kind of conspiring to, you were already doing work in this space beforehand. Most people would have been dismissive and thought, okay, that's great, but would have done paid lip service to it. So I just found it very interesting that you actually rolled up your sleeves and engaged in that community to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. No, I knew some people with disabilities, physical disabilities beforehand at work, and I wanted to fight for them. I wanted to advocate for them, especially after that that golf tournament, right? And
Yes.
being given that advice and being pointed to this group as an area that was not as well understood. And
Yeah.
I always love a challenge. I always love being told, there's a problem and I can help insert myself into that process.
Yeah.
So I just kind of threw myself at it right away. It was very similar to my mindset, in terms of recovery from my leg, right? Just throw yourself at it right away and dive right into it
Mm.
and embrace it. Embrace it. Even though I didn't have a personal connection or a
Right.
deeply personal connection, I was more than happy to volunteer my time. And now look, right? Like I've come full
Wow.
circle in a way, and I'm
Indeed.
further volunteering my time and trying to share my journey at town halls to inspire others, to allow my colleagues to disclose. It's been amazing. Some of the stories that I've heard from people who have heard my own journey, they have been more brave to talk about someone in their life, someone in their family who has a disability, to disclose that, to be authentic, to be more open. Because at the end of the day, I feel like if we're more authentic and if we can bring more of our full selves to work, it'll actually increase the quality of our work.
Is there a particular question that people always ask you that you wish they stop asking?
What caused the flesh-eating disease?
Ah. Geez, I think I probably asked you that same question too when we first met. And you probably could see you rolling your eyes. I'm like, oh, here we go again. Yeah.
The quick answer is, no one knows. It can be caused by something as simple as a bug bite, and anywhere bacteria can enter the body. But it's extremely, extraordinarily rare. And my surgeons basically compared it to being struck by lightning twice, right? The deeper answer for me, though, is I've never been one to care too much about what caused this. Knowing what caused it, it's not gonna bring my leg back,
Right.
right? And the point is that I'm always focused on the next thing, what lies ahead, not hanging on to the past. And I just want to know kind of what's forward, what's ahead, and where do we go from here. I had a lot of problems sleeping because of the effects of the various antibiotics and drugs, and that carried over I couldn't sleep basically for 3 months. That affected my health and my mood and all of that, right? And then when I transferred to Toronto and I had my family here, but I was still, at night, alone in the hospital. And I remember really tired and talking to my mom and telling her that I can't sleep. I've been given a lot of sleeping medication and I
Yes.
still can't sleep. Like, it's
Yes.
incredible. These are very strong, powerful drugs, right? I can't sleep. And my mom gave me a piece of advice that night, and she said, try to let it go.
Wow.
Let everything go. Let your leg go. Let what happened to you go. Let everything that's holding you back, your worries about, work and friends and impact on family and all of that. Let all of it go. Just try that for me. Try that for me
Wow.
tonight. And the insane thing was that night I closed my eyes and I let everything go in my mind. And I was like, I'm not thinking about my leg. I'm not thinking about my health. I'm not thinking about my family. I'm not thinking about my colleagues and work and all these things that are going around in my head. And for the first time in 3 months, I slept like a baby. And that helped me. The next morning, I was just so thankful. I'll never forget that advice. Let it go.
Mm.
Let it go. It's so hard.
So
But
hard.
once we make an intentional, a conscious effort to let it go, I think there's a release, and I think there's a release, and I think that release will help a lot of us today.
Wow. Did you expect to hear that from your mom?
I definitely appreciated it, and I'll never forget it.
Wow.
That's what moms are for, like the greatest advice for children, right? So even though I'm grown and adult, we can never have enough of that. And so I was very grateful.
Well, for someone who's, as we kind of wrap up here, for someone who's listening, who's kind of facing their own crisis, their own challenge, the economies, there's so much going volatile, there's so much going on in the world. That moment when life splits into kind of the before and the after. Like, what's the one thing you want people to hear from your story, from your experience, what you went through? What's the one thing that you want people to kind of keep in mind as they kind of go through life and hear your story?
I think we are all stronger and more adaptable than we even realize today. And while life may throw us a curveball, there's no reason not to embrace it. We'll discover new strengths, deeper connections, and unexpected sources of hope on the other side. I would say a lot of times there's uncertainty in life, right? Uncertainty in terms of the way forward or the path forward. There was certainly a lot of uncertainty for me. Am I even going to be able to walk again, right? But remember this. There are three things that I'd point out. First, it's okay to ask for help and to lean in on others. Second, your story is never over. It's evolving in ways that you or I can't even imagine. And thirdly, the challenges you face might reveal qualities and resilience you never thought you had previously. So embrace the challenge, embrace the valley. And, I think it's amazing. We may come out with so much hope on the other side.
Oh, well said, Will. I love that. All right. A couple of kind of rapid fire questions before we wrap up the episode today. Are you a coffee or tea person?
Coffee, 100%.
You definitely.
Absolutely.
I could have answered that for you.
Twice a day. It's so bad. Twice a day. Twice a day minimum.
Early bird or night owl?
I would say night owl for sure.
Okay.
I don't sleep a whole lot.
Okay.
I'm but night owl.
Okay.
I'll say night owl.
What's one word people would never use to describe you, but probably should?
That's a tough one.
That's a tough
one? That's a real tough one.
I was going to say comedian. You are actually got a great sense of humor. If anything, you've got even a much more acute sense of humor since, July 2023. Honestly, when I saw you, you've got such a, man, the number of times I've laughed and you're far serious much earlier. And, I'd say, but you've become much more relaxed. Great sense of humor. I think one of the things that people don't know about you is that you've got a great sense of humor. You make fun of me all the damn time. And then you're very kind to me now. But I think that if I were to answer the question on your behalf, that's something I would say.
Yeah, I love that, Charles. Humorous. Let's go with that.
Funny guy you are. Great sense of humor. What's a piece of advice you hear all the time, but you completely ignore?
Get back in shape.
At least you're honest. I don't know. Okay, last question here, because I know we're coming to the top of the hour here, and you're a baseball fan. So if you had a walk-up song today, what would it be?
Living on a Prayer.
Oh, beautiful. I love that. Great way to end our episode. Will, man, I love you. You've done it. Thank you so much for sharing your story. You just, when I heard about this a couple of years ago, and just to see how much you've evolved as a person, as a human being, how much you've impacted my life selfishly in terms of making me much more self-aware of the gratitude and just removing myself from the autopilot, just reminding myself how appreciative I am of all the things I have. To have you in my life, to have your story out there as well. You've made such a huge impact, and to see how much you've evolved and changed and spending time with your beautiful family. Thank you, man. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for having such a positive impact on all of us, and me included. It's an absolute blessing. So thank you.
My pleasure, Charles. It's an honor to be here with you and your listeners. Reach out anytime. As I said, my story is still evolving. Our stories are still evolving. Never give up hope, and happy to share further learnings in the future as well.
Great. I'll make sure to include all your details, and there's a link to an amazing article that your employer wrote about you as well that I'll share in the show notes. So thank you everyone for listening, and thanks again for being able to share some of your time with us today as well.
You're welcome. Thank you, Charles.
All right.